Right on. Welcome back to Defender of the Riff. I'm Daniel Dekay, and today I am joined by Blake Ibanez from Power Trip and Fugitive. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Body hurts a little bit from last night, but I'm feeling great.
Full disclosure to whoever's watching, or whenever this gets released, we are filming this the morning after the big Power Trip comeback gig sold out in Pomona, California. So yeah, I'm feeling a bit of a bangover as well. My neck's a little sore today too. I was having fun last night.
Yeah, it was great. It was really hot, but that's how it's got to be when there's that many people packed into a room like that. So yeah, we were feeling the energy, and I'm not used to playing that long, so playing a set that long, I'm feeling the bangover today, but I'm happy. Yeah.
You were grinning ear to ear the entire hour, 15-minute set. It was wild, dude. That was a lot of fun.
It was fun, man.
So let's just bring it back to the beginning. What got you first into music?
I was listening to the radio in the 90s and stuff, and was always into rock music. My dad was always playing the Beatles and the Beach Boys and the Who, to new wave stuff like the Talking Heads and like Jimi Hendrix. I mean, he's a big blues guy too, so guys like that. And that was kind of what got me hooked into it. And I think once I sort of made it clear that I wanted a guitar, I think my dad took it upon himself to show me guys that he knew were cool guitar players, like Hendrix and Pete Townsend, and showing me bands like the Ramones, and because I think I was skateboarding and getting into stuff like that too. So it's like, oh, you like punk rock? Then what about the Ramones and all that? So that was kind of what got me into it. I think the combo of skateboarding and guitar music, and just kind of taking it from there. But I've always watching videos as a kid of Pete Townsend destroying an amp, or Jimi Hendrix lighting his guitar on fire. I think that was kind of what started it.
Was your dad a musician at all? Did he play guitar at all, or was he just more of a fan?
Yeah, he was just a music fan. And I had some cousins that were musicians and stuff like that. But no, he just, I think he was into art and music and everything, and was definitely feeding that creative side of me in a good way. And my parents are always supportive of what I was doing, So I think that's kind of what led me to get more into it and to be more involved. And like growing up, I had an older sister, and she was, she'd have her guy friends over, and they'd be, talking about music or putting something on. And so I wanted to hang out with the older kids, the cool kids. So I kind of got into music that way. But I think it just spoke to me from an early age, just listening, watching MTV as a kid. I would like play hooky from school and fake sick just to like sit home and watch music videos. And like the feeling you'd get back in the day when your favorite song would come on the radio or on TV. It was like, I just remember being a kid, it was like such an insane feeling, because you had to wait all day to hear the song you wanted to hear, and you had to endure all the bands you didn't like, to get to the songs you liked. So you hated the bands that you hated more. But the feeling that I had when that song I Want to Hear came on was unlike any other feeling I had. So I knew I loved music.
What was like one of those songs when you were a kid that you were like just dying to hear? Like for me, it was Thunderstruck, for example. Like when I was like 7 years old, I couldn't wait for Thunderstruck to go in the rotation. What were like some of the early bangers that you were like obsessed with?
Bands like Smashing Pumpkins and stuff. I'd sit there and wait for that Smashing Pumpkins song to come on the radio, or Third Eye Blind, That was just like super catchy, and that was what I wanted to hear. That was kind of late 90s, so it wasn't so much heavy stuff. I mean, the heavy stuff that was happening then was starting, new metal was starting to happen. Mm-hmm. So I was not having that at that age, and never really did. But that was kind of the beginning of my musical interest, was really more so just guitar-oriented rock, pop music, and then it really wasn't until I got more into punk rock and more into that kind of led me to hardcore music. And then I came back around and sort of found metal in a different way, because the first metal I was introduced to really wasn't through my family or anything. It was just MTV, mm-hmm. And it was new metal, and that didn't really speak to me at the time. I was a little too young. I don't think I really had the angst, and at that point to want something heavy. I think a lot of the guys in the band are my older buddies, that are a few years older than me. I think when that came out, they were ready for the aggressive music, mm-hmm. so it made sense to them. For me, it was a little too a little too early. I didn't want it.
I feel like we were too young to really latch on to that stuff when it was coming out. I was way more inclined to like stick with the shit my dad was showing me. I was way more into, you know, classic rock, as you mentioned, as opposed to like the cool music of the time, which was like, to me, not cool at all.
Yeah, it was, you know, that was just the timing, you know, but like I said, my friends that are a little older than me, they were a little older and they were seeing grunge happening, and that was heavy and aggressive. And then I think when nu metal came along, they were a teenager, and then it was, you know, okay, this is really heavy, you know. So I totally get it. I think the timing wasn't quite right for me.
Tell me about that first guitar that you got, and kind of the first either songs or kind of progressions that you were riffing on. What was your like journey when you got a guitar, you busted it out of the box? What do we do with it?
I want to say my first guitar was a like acoustic guitar that I got out of one of those magazines, like a Sky Mall or something. It was like one of those mail order magazines you got in the mail, and I think I really wanted one. I think I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. I was really young, and I think I just got it and like played with it. I didn't really like learn it. I just was like, I have a guitar now. And then I think it was, you know, I think probably my 10th or 11th birthday or something, I asked for electric guitar. I was ready to really play. Because I was like, this acoustic guitar is not doing anything for me. I can't play any cool riffs on here. I mean, I think my first guitar was an Ibanez guitar. I know everybody will be happy to hear that. I did at one point play an Ibanez guitar. But yeah, it was like, it must have been a starter RG, and I think it came with like a little amp this big. It was like
Combo pack.
Yeah, it was like a starter pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point I pulled it out and it just started trying to find a riff that I, you know, just play something that sounded like something I'd heard, and not a cool story at all, but I'm pretty sure the first riff I played on it was the song that was like, had been on the radio a little before that, the Santa Monica by Everclear.
Oh, that's fun.
I always tell the story because it's not a cool story, but it's the easiest riff ever. It's just, I mean, it's like you can just fall on that riff really easily if you just pick up a guitar. So I was like, oh, okay, I can kind of figure out how to listen to a riff and maybe figure out how it sounds, you know. But I think, yeah, that was, I guess, not the hardest part, but I think that was when it all started making more sense, when I was able to get an ear for figuring out how to play riffs. You know, that's like the most instrumental thing for me as a guitar player, was once I started learning how to sound out the stuff I was hearing. So like, I had a guitar player, my mom had found this old blues guitar player guy, and he would come over to my house and give me lessons, and it would really, I mean, give me some lessons, and I had taken some other guitar lessons too at a little guitar shop, but this guy, and those were a little more, you know, learning all the formal teachings of guitar, all those chords. I was kind of learning how to read music, but it really wasn't fun for me because I was playing an acoustic guitar or something that made my fingers hurt, and I'm learning all these kind of boring things, which were good to learn, but this guy came over and started, I could just put on a CD and, hey, can you show me how to play my favorite band song? And then he would do that. And at some point, I think I just started figuring out how to do it myself. You know, I developed an ear for the notes, and was able to sound out what I was hearing. And that led me to just start writing and coming up with my own shit, because once I started, you know, looking at it like a map almost, and seeing where all the chord progressions were and what all my favorite bands were doing and where they were going, it was almost like a road to figuring out my own stuff. So
yeah, it's unique to guitar, I think, is that you can really use your ear to figure out songs, start to finish, solos, multiple guitar parts, everything, without really knowing a lick of theory.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody that really knows how to do any of that shit, especially not in metal, you know, or hardcore or whatever, you know. I think everybody's kind of self-taught, you know, like you just figuring it out, learning your friends' songs, learning, you know. I was really lucky to be surrounded by some great musicians coming up that sort of laid out a blueprint for what I do, you know, and definitely wouldn't have been able to figure it out without their help, you know. I think, you know, guitar players like, especially with what Power Trip does, like Wade Allison from the band Iron Age, who we lost a few years ago, but he was just a really kind of visionary guitar player. He was a really good guitar player, but Tone. I didn't really know about that when I was younger. You don't really realize because none of us want to be tone snobs, but the tone is 100% the sound of the music. You know what I mean? So it is important. You don't have to be a snob to realize that. So
you don't have to be a snob to want to sound good.
Yeah. Well, some people like when you try to talk about that. Well, come on, it's like you're being snobby about it. But no, it's you think about your favorite records, your favorite bands. I mean, it's all the guitar sound is a huge deal. It's like the sound of the singer's voice. So he taught me a lot about tone, a lot about. He connected the dots between a lot of the metal stuff that we all loved and the hardcore scene, and hardcore formula. So he was a really big deal. Guys in our scene like that. I was surrounded by guys that were good, like at what we were trying to do, in different ways.
I mean, we're talking about a lot of influences and the bands that kind of made you want to write your own songs. But we've got these guitars here. Why don't you show me what some of those influences sounded like? Some standout riffs.
Well, there were so many. I mean, I remember one I always remember is the first time I heard the first song on the second Cro-Mags album, Death Camps. I mean, anybody you show that song that's never heard that, it's pretty unbelievable. And it just comes out of the gate with a riff that's like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, that's what I want to do. You know what I mean? And I still feel that way when I hear it to this day. But it's kind of like a Master of Puppets riff. It's the same effect you get when it comes in. It's like, whoa, It's like, so it's basically like that. And then the whole song is like down picking. So
so sick.
It's just like that. It's because it's like Master of Puppets. Just really tight down picking stuff is I was just like, I want to do that. And a lot of the New York hardcore crossover stuff was kind of in the same vein. A lot of down picking, a lot of tight mutes, tight guitars and stuff like that.
I imagine Leeway was huge for you.
Leeway was a big one. Stuff like that. Something like that. That was big for me, just learning all that stuff. So playing along with Leeway records and Cro-Mags records and all the bands from that scene, the original crossover scene. Because all those bands sort of did that, Sick of It All went crossover, Agnostic Front went crossover. There were a lot of cool bands in that world, Madball. So that was big for me, learning all those riffs and just kind of figuring out what they were doing and trying to do it my own way. And then finding, just even the straight thrash stuff, like Bonded by Blood.
Yeah, that one's sick.
Yeah, and to me that was sounded like Cro-Mags to me. So I was connecting the dots between all these bands, like how they sound the same or different or whatever. That was sort of to me that sounded like something like crossover, but it was just straight up thrash, Slayer.
Yeah.
What else? There's the riff on Show No Mercy, the song. It's like. Yeah, stuff like that.
The crossover versus thrash thing, it's just, they're literally in the same family. Of course, they sound completely different, though. You can instantly listen to a record and be like, this is a thrash band or this is a crossover band, but it's all the same family. We all like fast alternate picking and tight down picking and cool riffs.
Yeah, I mean, and
based a lot around. These three things.
And everything, like we were talking about earlier, like Rat, and the heavy metal chord, which we were going to ask someone if they knew the
proper
the proper
for the heavy metal
terminology
chord.
for the heavy metal chord. Rat. Like,
Yeah, body talk.
Open G chord and stuff like that. But the heavy metal chord, yeah. You know, and like a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, like, and I was hearing bands doing that a lot, like Prong, you know. You know, so once I started playing with those, and then, you know, there's all these different ways you can change the voicing of the chord, you know, throughout a song or riff, you know, and every riff is different, every song's different, you know. Doesn't mean every song has to have that in it, but if you can throw those in there, you can kind of make stuff sound different. Like, there's a one riff in a Power Trip song where I kind of stay on the same fret, but I play a different type of chord, and it almost sounds like a different note, but it's not, you know. I think it's like... You know, so it's like, it's kind of like the same, it's the exact same note, but it sounds weird. It just doesn't sound the same. So
I was today years old when I realized I'm playing that riff completely wrong.
Yeah, so stuff like that, those little weird notes that you could add in there, but I'll throw them in wherever they make sense. Sometimes if you try to force them in, it's a little too much, but like, you know, like we were talking about going back to the heavy metal core with the Rat thing, like one of our songs, Divine Apprehension, that I think when I was writing it, I was like listening to a lot of that stuff at the time, and I put like a heavy metal Rat, Judas Priest type part of it, you know? You know?
It's heavy metal as fuck.
Yeah, but that was like, I was listening to Painkiller and even Turbo, you know? Like I was just all the ways they were playing on there. So bringing in some heavy metal stuff, and then, you know, trying to just integrate everything together. But there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's tons of hardcore bands, influential stuff like that.
Looping back to Wade and Iron Age, I think that whether you're into metal or hardcore or punk, or whether you've never heard music before in your life, you could put on The Sleeping Eye, and it's very easy to recognize that there's something very special about that record. And you mentioned the tone. The tone is crazy. Would it be fair to say that that record had a lot to do with you and the player and the musician you became? Because I know for me, that's like on my Mount Rushmore of perfect records.
Yeah, I mean, we played the record release show. It was like our first or second year as a band, you know, but they had put out an album before that called Constant Struggle, which was a really big deal for us. And that's part of the reason, you know, that's definitely part of the reason we started the band. And I remember, you know, talking to Riley, we were bonding over the fact that we liked that record, and all the records that were influential on that, and you know, they were kind of like our older brothers in a way. So you know, we wanted to do something different in a way, but you couldn't help but be inspired by them. I mean, like I said, there was sort of like a blueprint where, like, how do you connect all this classic metal stuff that has nothing to do with our scene and make it make sense within that context, you know? And it was the same way that I'm sure all those bands in the 80s, the hardcore bands that were crossover did, you know? They took all the cool stuff from the metal that we all liked and the aggression and everything, and kind of made it cool to hardcore kids and made it fun and energetic and immediate, more and with all that same attitude, you know? And I think it's all about the delivery and kind of the attitude that we try to do it, you know? I mean, with the metal scene, I think that's the part that some of us grapple with. It's like we love metal, but there's elements of metal that we don't like as much, you know? And we try to just capture all the elements of those classic records that we like and do it in our own way, you know, without the bullshit, you know? But we still are huge metal fans, and you know, that's just kind of where we're coming from.
You talked about how important it was to be surrounded by good musicians, guys who were a little bit older than you, and how important that was to your journey as a musician. Kind of, take me back, paint a picture for me what it looked like for you. You said you're like 11, 12, you get the electric guitar, you get the blues lessons, you're learning covers, you're starting to write on your own. Yeah. Who were the first people you start jamming with outside of the bedroom?
I just had some friends, I think, just dudes that I think I went to like camp with, or just like my sister's friends, little brothers and shit, and we started jamming and just jamming in our parents' living rooms, recording on very primitive digital means, I guess, like Fruit Loops and shit.
That's awesome.
I guess it's probably not very primitive, but you know what I mean. If you compare it to now, it sounds pretty bad. But I started jamming with my friends, and nothing really went anywhere. We were super young. I mean, it's like parents dropping us off at shows young, So we had limited capabilities, but one of my friends was a drummer, and he was even a little younger than me. And we had kind of made our way into the hardcore scene. This was probably when we were 14, 15 years old, and I started meeting the guys that I know now, like Nick and Chris from Power Trip, and we were playing in hardcore punk bands. And I guess to get to Power Trip, we had a hardcore punk band called Reality Check. We would just play, Negative Approach covers and Outburst and stuff, New York hardcore. But we were a pretty basic hardcore band, and I think we had sort of disbanded, and we were looking for a new singer. And Riley's prior band, which was called Balls Out, had just disbanded a couple years before, and he was kind of looking to start a new band too. So we just kind of linked up, and I brought my drummer, who was a little younger than me at the time. I brought him along. His name was Mark, and he was 15, so he couldn't even drive. So I just got my license. So I was able to go pick up Riley, who may or may not have had a car. I don't think he did. And he was like 5 years older than me. And that's kind of how it got started. And, so that's sort of how I ended up with these guys.
I've always remained that Texas is a very unique place in America for music, and specifically metal. I think it's kind of like when you look at a spot like Europe and you can look at like what Sweden is for metal. Yeah. I think that like Texas is your American equivalent. I always kind of like to pick friends' brains from Texas on this. Yeah. Why do you think the Texas music scene is so strong?
I think there's a few things. One, it's a really big state. But there was a very strong scene, I guess you'd say, in Texas for years, especially in the hardcore scene, with a lot of, there were people that were older guys. There were, like our booking agent, Timmy, put on this festival for years called Chaos and Tejas, which was this really cool, really unique festival that would combine, metal and punk, and would just get all these bands that you sometimes had never heard of, but that were really crucial bands from all over the world, So there'd be Japanese hardcore bands and Swedish punk bands and, Bolt Thrower, and just like, it was this mix. It was like a history lesson, and it would kind of force you to dig deep into the roots and learn about bands. And I feel like there was just a culture in Texas for a long time that was a little hard-nosed about just like knowing your roots, knowing the old school stuff, and understanding it, appreciating it, and it reflected on the music, because you had bands like Iron Age, Bitter End, Pride Kills, and all these bands in the Texas scene that were, it was all about respecting your elders and knowing the their influences, but they were also pretty open about their influences. I always talk about how, back in like the MySpace days, Iron Age and Bitter End and these bands would have like, the influences section, and they would put like Cro-Mag's Age of Coral 1986 or something. It's hilarious. It literally, and it was, you could just like write them all down and go look them up later, because this is pre-Spotify, but you could go search around the internet and find shit. There were blog spots and stuff. So it was just like a cool history lesson. So if you're really interested, and they'd be showing us records and stuff too, but everyone was always searching for the beginnings of everything and like the early stuff and and I think that's what we've always kind of tried to do, like we have our favorite bands and the stuff that everybody knows, but it's like we always want to know what they were influenced by. What was Metallica listening to when they were writing Kill 'Em All? How did it come out that way? Because to us, we like those bands invented this sound. Slayer, like they invented that sound. You know what I mean? But like, what was Slayer listening to? And when you go that deep, that's kind of how the hardcore scene is. Like, what was that hardcore band listening to sound like they did? And it was always something that you wouldn't expect. It could be a band from Japan or something, or something interesting. And like when it comes to Metallica, it's like you want to look up, who's GBH, who's Discharge. They're listening to Thin Lizzy and
Diamond Head.
And Diamond Head. And so that was always so fun, and it still is to me. It's like understanding, if a band I like what did they do to arrive at this point? I think it's always cool to see how they connected the dots, because that's what I think that's what we all try to do is connect the dots between things that maybe aren't alike but have similarities. Like, where do Thin Lizzy and Motorhead connect? Like that's always interesting. And if you can draw parallels between bands like that, I think you can find connections and maybe ones that no one else has noticed, and maybe when you try to do that, it sounds a little different. I don't know. You can only hope. But it's always been a fun thing for me, and I think that's what the older guys in that scene, it was always just kind of about knowing as much as you can about influential bands and the older bands and obscure bands, and and that was like, it was just a cool time to grow up in that world, because there was so much feeding into that. We had a fest called Fun Fest in Austin, and they would get, it was like they would get this mega lineup, and it would come out every year, and we'd all be so excited to see who was on it, because it would be everybody from like Snoop Dogg to Hum to Slayer to Bad Brains.
Love that.
And, it was just like, it covered every base, but it was fun because everybody could go, and you could literally see like the Descendants and then go watch Slayer or something like that. And it was fun for us. And again, we were all, I think, in Texas, always all listening to lots of different kinds of music. Everybody liked everything from My Bloody Valentine to Discharge, and the Crumb Suckers, or just like Integrity, anything, old music, and just being well versed in all that. I think everybody just always shared that. It was not a scene where it was like, you have to just listen to this kind of music, And I think now our current times reflect that more. When you have streaming and the barriers are totally gone, you can listen to everything and no one judges you, I don't think, and you can. And I just feel like it didn't used to be like that in a lot of places. You could, it was, hey, this is metal and we only do metal, And I think it's better when everybody can listen to what they want to and be into all sorts of stuff. They don't have to be limited to what they can like. And it allows, I think, every band to flourish more, and, music to be more fun.
It's really interesting to hear you say that specifically for me, because my experience with Power Trip, when I started to come see you in the earliest days, was I would look around the room and I would be like, whoa. Because I was deep into the metal scene exclusively at that point in my life. And I would look around the room and I'd be like, whoa, I've never seen old people, young people, dudes, chicks, metalheads, punks, and hardcore kids all at one show, just like intermingling and hanging with each other. We had like crust punk, battle vest looking dudes, and dudes with Iron Maiden back patches. It was like just a complete mixed bag of scenes that you guys really brought a lot of people together. And it's cool to hear you say that, you believe in that kind of listen to what you like and don't believe in the barriers of genres, because that's exactly what that band was to me.
Yeah, it happened very organically. But I guess at the time, especially when we sort of stumbled into the metal world, which was, I wouldn't say on accident, but we would never really set out to be a metal band. Mm-hmm. I think it just naturally happened. And I think once we kind of got there, we said, well, this is a little more uncommon, for a band like us that dips our toes into a lot of different scenes to exist in this world like this. So it's so much more common now. But that's always been a cool thing. I think our network extends into different worlds, and I think we're proud of that. It's cool. It makes it more fun. I think we were always stoked that we could go on tour with everybody from Danzig to our friends in Sheer Mag or Title Fight. We were just all over the place, and it was kind of fun that we could do that.
Prime example, you're one of the headline acts tomorrow on a straight up punk rock festival. You're one of like 4 bands that aren't like straight up punk. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as they reached out to us and we saw what they were doing, it's like, this is really cool,
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't get to happen very much, where, Golden Voice, who's been around a long time, and, they're an authority on this stuff. You knew they were gonna do a good job with it, and yeah, you see the lineup. I mean, it's like everybody from Misfits and Cro-Mags to like our friends at Turnstile, and it's gonna be really cool. I think once we saw that and they came to us with that, we were like, this would be a good reason to come out here and do this again. Because yeah, I feel like we can sort of fit into that in our own way. And there's so many cool bands playing that we're excited to see and be around. Suicidal, and the list goes on. So
you like join up with Power Trip dudes and start jamming when you're like 16?
Yeah.
Like that's young as fun. I mean, even getting your first electric guitar at 11 is young by all standards.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people don't. Some people might have a classical guitar kicking around the house, but like kids don't really start to rock till like 13, 14, 15. You're already thinking about forming a band at that point.
Yeah. Well, I'd been playing kind of in just garage bands and stuff even before that, but my first gig I ever played was just me and my friend, and this was before all that. This was in like 4th grade.
Who's playing gigs in 4th grade?
Yeah, it was a talent show. But and we played like the whole school. And I do remember what we were playing. We did one song at the talent show, which was just Louie Louie. Literally the easiest song ever, like, give me 3 chords, I can try to, and I remember like practicing really hard for that, just like 3 chords. But yeah, we did that at the talent show, and I remember jamming some other covers. I think we did like My Generation by The Who. Just something really easy.
People try to
Yeah. And then I Love Rock and Roll.
No, 3-chord rock songs are great.
3 chords max, yeah. And so that was kind of some of the early shit. And yeah, I think that was like the early gigs I did was just 3-chord rock stuff. And then, skipping ahead, like I said, when we were in the hardcore stuff, it was Negative Approach, Ready to Fight, which is basically like another 3-chord
Yeah,
song.
Riff It, that's a 3-quarter.
Just all sorts of stuff. Like, that's kind of where I started downpicking on it. Black Flag. Just something like, I really like stuff that moves like that, where I don't have to move my fingers a lot. So I was doing stuff like that a lot when I was writing back then, and still do. I like strumming the guitar, I like picking and playing fast and stuff too, but I also like strumming. So I try to write some parts where I'm strumming if I can, if they sound aggressive enough. Yeah, that's kind of the stuff we were doing back then. Just hardcore and yeah, Cro-Mags, Sick of It All, Bad Brains. That was all the early stuff. We were, the kind of earliest influences, I think, of what we were doing.
You bring up you like where you don't have to move your hands a lot. I think a lot of people with guitar tricks focus on like economy picking and like right-hand tricks. I noticed that you have a lot of left-hand tricks with the way that you change between power chords on the E string and the A string. Like the way you were just doing, the way you're rolling your finger up and down.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's not, a lot of people will go like,
Yeah.
And I noticed you're like just the 2 fingers and you make it work.
I love just doing that because it's sort of a different sound, and it's easier just to move one finger, and it has a different sound. I mean, there's a lot of guys that do that, Tom G. Warrior. And then obviously Obituary does that a lot. And then it just sounds cool. Wade did that a lot too, Iron Age. I've always liked that sound. I like, because it sort of combines when the notes ring and the chords ring, they kind of overlap, so it almost sounds a little different. that's even like Husker Du and stuff, Bob Mould, that's, you know, like that sound when something's always ringing over it when you're changing chords. I love that.
And speaking of other things that you do in a lot of your songs, you love that like dissonant ringing open E stuff. Like, is that kind of come from the same book?
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about Motorhead earlier, and it's just like, I play a lot of stuff in the same key of E or whatever, I like the way it sounds when the notes overlap, like even like Bathory and stuff like that. It sounds kind of evil and cool, so.
Hell yeah, because it is evil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. But that's kind of one thing I like to do is just because I do kind of stay in the same key a lot, so just play an E and layer things.
You brought up that we were talking about Motorhead earlier. Camera wasn't rolling. You said the coolest shit about Motorhead I ever heard. Talk to me about Motorhead for a minute. It's a band that obviously influenced every rocker in the world. They're the best, and Lemmy was truly one of a kind. Tell me a little bit about Motorhead and what it means to you.
We all, as a band, and everybody I know loves Motorhead, and but to me, it's always seemed more of like a attitude and like a way of life, a way of the way you sound, the rhythmic, the delivery of the lyrics, the arrangement. That's what Motorhead has always meant to me. I mean, obviously Motorhead has a lot of great riffs, but I think we were talking about riffs earlier, and I've never really thought of them as like a strictly like a riff band. It's always been about the ethos and the energy and the attitude and Lemmy's, the way he delivers the songs and the drumming and everything like that. Like that's what it is. So the things I've always taken mostly from Motorhead in terms of how they inspired me is those things, like I do that all the time, Obviously,
and that can be any Motorhead song ever.
I mean,
exactly.
I just integrated that into a lot of the shit I write, and obviously the drumming, the D beats and everything like that. The arrangements are generally pretty simple, and I love that, basically a metal band, a heavy metal band with simple arrangements, and they deliver it in a more of a punk way, something the same way that GBH does, or where you can remember the song very easily and play along with it very easily, and just rock, and I love that. I just, like I said, it's all about I think with them, it's always been so much about the attitude that, the biggest inspiration they have on us has always been the delivery, like lyrics, drumming, arrangement, all that stuff. Obviously guitar, but they go a lot further than just the riff.
I think that's a really observant point. It's like they're not they got great riffs, but they're not a riff band. It's
they're
so
not a
much
riff
more than
dependent
that.
band at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot more going on.
Yeah. Like, that's like pretty much as riffy as it gets with them sometimes. It's cool, but it's still it's
instantly recognizable.
Yeah, it is, exactly. I want to talk a bit about some of the other riffs that you've written, specifically the Maniac EP with Fugitive. I think that a lot of people at first glance thought that, this is like just Blake doing a new Power Trip thing. I think that was like what a lot of people expected, and then heard the record. And at least to me, I hear like a lot more of like a loose rock and roll vibe to it, which I know is a huge part of your influence that perhaps doesn't shine through as much in Power Trip, which is a very tight band on the one, fucking tight shit with the stops. And I think the Fugitive, you're like, it shows that you like, as you said, you like strumming.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely some stuff. I mean, as soon as I tuned my guitar down a little bit, just a step down, it opened the door to try a lot of things. There were riffs that maybe wouldn't have sounded as good. But I think when you go a step down, I feel like it translates a lot better for me. Sometimes, for some reason, if I go like a half step down, some of the things I'm used to doing don't sound quite as good. I don't know, like some of the moves I make. But that was definitely more like I don't have to play fast. Everything was getting faster and faster in Power Trip, which is great. But I wanted to be able to slow it down, and because at the point we were at, I think going slower wouldn't have really made much more sense in context because the fast songs were just getting faster. So if I tried to put like a Motorhead speed song on the record, it's a little harder to get it to, you don't want to go next song and it's really, really fast. You could pull it off maybe, but I wanted to be able to slow down a bit and go more into, a different era, I guess, of, I'm like more mid 80s, Show No Mercy, like that speed before it really got super fast. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I could pull out some of the influences that I've always had, but maybe be a little more on the nose, like the Celtic Frost stuff, getting a little slower or a little heavier. And just trying new stuff. I at this point Power Trip had written a lot of music, probably a couple albums and maybe another album worth of EPs and stuff. So it was sort of a challenge trying to figure out what I hadn't done yet, something that could be different and not just rewriting like an old song. But it came pretty easily once I kind of figured out what I was trying to accomplish. It was like, it came together pretty quickly. So yeah, I think just kind of diving into some different influences, mainly within what I'm used to doing was kind of key.
I mean, another band that's definitely worth mentioning in the Riff conversation is Eternal Champion.
Yeah. On
that first record, what was your Riff contribution to that? Did you write most of that stuff, or was that more of like a band effort?
Yeah, it was a band effort. I joined right when like the first lineup to play the first show. Jason kind of reached out to me, and we'd been becoming closer friends. And I wrote like most of one song that when we first got together. It was like a split EP. The song was called Retaliator. And then after that, he had gotten Arthur and some of those guys in the band. And the song that I contributed was I Am the Hammer song.
Nice, sick tune. They still play it live every time?
Yeah, I mean, we wrote it in a room, but I just remember kind of coming in with the idea I had the two riffs that I kind of sent to Jason with the drum machine. One of them I think we were writing the first Power Trip record, I had the main riff of that song, and I think I'd played it for Chris, and it was just, I don't know if it really fit on the album, the first Power Trip album. We didn't really have a song idea for it, but I still had it in my back pocket, and then I sent it to Jason with the other riff, and he really liked it. And then I had like an idea for the intro, like kind of like the Anthrax Indians, Yeah, so, and I think we just kind of put it together in a room, and I think the other guitar player, Carlos, may have like messed with one of the first licks and too. So it was a band thing, but the kind of the bones of the song musically, I think, were some of the stuff I'd had from just like laying around, and yeah, it turned out great. It was like, it's cool that they still play it, and it's like it's like an anthem.
Band rules, all those guys rule. Every version, I've seen you playing guitar, I've seen Arthur playing guitar, I've seen Arthur playing drums, I've seen the band in so many different versions.
Musical chairs.
Yeah, the musical, it's cool, but I mean, this kind of ties back into what you were talking about earlier, and to give some context for maybe someone who's watching who doesn't know, Jason is the lead singer of Iron Age, who was singing Eternal Champion, and Arthur is like the sixth member of Power Trip. It's like,
well, I mean,
that's your dude.
It is really, at this point, when you really look at it all, we've all just been in all each other's bands at some point or another. Like, I mean, I filled in for Iron Age for one show one time. Chris was in Iron Age until they disbanded, essentially. When Wade passed away, he was in the band for a while. Arthur had played in Iron Age for a tour, I believe. He had recorded some of their stuff. Chris has played guitar in Power Trip when I was not there. Arthur's played guitar in Power Trip when Nick's not there. So we've all just kind of been all over each other's worlds. But yeah, me and Jason have, obviously we did Eternal Champion, and we've done some other stuff together. It's just like a big, big family of cool musicians and stuff. And at this point, we've all been playing with each other and around each other for almost 2 decades, probably.
Must have been cool as well, being the younger dude from that group and coming in and looking at all these dudes with such good chops. Like Arthur literally can play every instrument and produce and write. Like, it's like as a young kid coming into that, I could imagine that it was like perhaps some of the drive you needed to like get get as good as you could be because you're hanging with dudes that were older than you and better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it never really has been about being the best guitar player. You know, I'm not really a guy that sits around and tries to get really good at wowing people with my guitar skills. I just care mostly about the riffs and the arrangements, you know? So obviously I have my way of doing things and when it comes to lead guitar, but you know, what I spend my time doing is listening to music and thinking about arrangements, thinking about song ideas, thinking about riffs. That's mostly what I do. So, you know, I think everybody in that world, in our world, that was what we were doing. I don't think anybody was sitting there trying to be the best guitar player, but they were trying to, I think, write the best songs, you know, write the coolest songs, create the coolest vision for a band.
I think that, you know, being a well-rounded musician is way more important than being the flashiest or most technically proficient guitar player, because when you do become that good at guitar, you don't really want to play with anyone else in a band since you become like a Steve Vai or a Paul Gilbert, and you just kind of like, dude, you're like, but you Buckethead is just like sitting there alone, just doing his own thing because, you know, he's that guy. No one can keep up with that. You know, it's a different type of person than someone who sits and arranges and writes songs for a band.
And there's so many amazing guitar players, and there's no knock on guys that do that.
Absolutely,
you know, obviously,
not.
I mean, we all love them. But, you know, I look at guys like that do it all, and like Eddie Van Halen and stuff. And you know, it's not always about being the flashiest. You know, Eddie could do anything. You know, but he didn't always do it. You know, he would play a solo that had a little bit of flash in it, you know, but that was just a really memorable, really, you know, had tons of attitude, tons of character.
Let's just talk quick on like some gear stuff, like a rig rundown. You've got Killer Tone live and in the studio. When you can pick exactly, you know, your home rig, what is your home rig? What is your sound?
I mean, at home, I have a Les Paul Standard I play like every day, and I love that guitar. And I've been recording with that guitar for all the Fugitive stuff. But you know, like I have my JCM 800. It's a '86 2203. It's a single channel that I modded to put an effects loop in it, and I just love the way the head sounds. And I don't see myself ever not playing that. It's, you know, those '80s 800s just sound really, really good. And I just got it at the right time, when I was ready to have one, and it changed the way I wrote and the way I played and the way our record sounded. So yeah, that was huge for me. But that's what I play at home. Out here, obviously, we got 800s and dual channel 800s and stuff, and those are great. Pretty much just all Marshall stuff, cabs. At home, I have like a Line 6 Spider amp, you know, so that's got the
insane channel,
insane setting. I don't play on insane, actually. I'm more of a metal channel guy.
Yeah, you're metal channel? All right.
Yeah, that's good just to flip on. And then I'll play amp sims on like GarageBand when I'm making demos and stuff, which sound pretty good. Well, you know.
Tube screamer in front of an 800.
Yeah, yeah, just a TS9 into 800. And the cool thing about that setup is that, you know, it really, everybody that plays any different guitar, but even just one guitar through that amp sounds different. You know, everything you do when you're playing dictates how it sounds.
I'm teching for you on this run and literally played the same riffs you were about to play through your exact rig, and then handed you the guitar and listened to you play the same riffs, and I'm like, wow, it sounds so fucking different.
Yeah.
Eddie Van Halen used to say, it's in the hands, man.
Yeah, the way you pick, the way you hold your palm down, the way you know, your left hand. Yeah, all that stuff's super important. And that's something I've honed in a little bit over the years, is exactly how I want to play and how I need to play. You know, not rushing too much, you know, and especially when you play any a cleaner amp, it sort of shows you where your flaws are. Always. So, you know, like I always lay off a lot when I fast pick or anything. I play pretty softly, actually. So you know, and when you play on an amp like a JCM 800, you get that chicka chicka thing, you know. And if you play on a high gain amp, that doesn't come through, you know.
It's true.
So once you get that definition, I feel like it's really hard to go back to the layers of overdrive. So I do that. You know, I try to play a little softer with my right hand. That makes it just easier to move around and get more precision. Because when I would play hard, especially even live, if you get really energized, you want to play really hard. then you get tired and then you lose some of that precision. So playing softly is helped me a lot. But you kind of hear all these things as you play on that amp, and cleaner guitar settings, you hear what you're doing. How hard you're playing, how tightly you're playing, how consistent you are.
I found one of the craziest things when I started familiarizing myself with your rig was your pick gauge.
Yeah.
You're using like .50s. They're like paper thin.
Yeah.
Like if I tried to alternate pick that fast on that, like I feel like it would just break in half. Like I'm using 1.14, which I know is excessively thick for a lot of people.
Pretty thick, yeah.
Yeah, but like most metal dudes are rocking like .90, like 50's really thin.
I can't, it's like so weird to me, Matt. It's weird to me to imagine playing it with a really thick pick, which I think it's the same for you, playing a soft pick, yeah. Well, these aren't the softest. I mean, they're definitely soft compared to what you're doing, but they got a little bit of,
Bro.
Get a little bit. What do you got?
Let me grab one of these.
Yeah.
Try here. Try
Okay,
that thick boy. Yeah. Let's try.
Oh my God, dude. No.
Like it's so weird. It's so much weird.
See, I can still do it, but it's like it's not responding the same way. It's like I have to relearn how to.
Same here. I can still do it, but the's so much give.
I feel like it's gonna break my strings. This fucking thing, like, is how thick it is. Yeah, I don't know. I just came up playing. I just always played this, and I think it's just the way that I hold it and the way that I clamp down on it. When I have that little bit of give, I think that's how I learned to play. It's like I have to, I play those picks all the time. That's because that's a great point you just made. Like even your pick is going to affect the way that you play and the way that the amp sounds.
Of course.
Like something as small as your pick, your string gauge, everything, where you put your hands. These are all really, all these things are crucial, and they amount to how it comes out.
I've seen you play a couple different guitars over the years, but it always seems like you're coming back to this one.
Yeah.
What's the deal with the magic of this guitar? Because I'm playing another one of your guitars right here, and I notice you just you could bring as many guitars as you want on the road, and you seem to always go back to that one.
I just got really comfortable playing this guitar. Well, one, it has a pretty thin neck, which I really like. It doesn't get taller up here. So some of the soloists, they like to go up right here and get wider. I'm not really comfortable with that. And I think playing this for years, you get used to have all the space you have with your arm and how minimal it is. Mm-hmm. You can kind of throw it around. It's super light. I would probably, getting used to playing a Les Paul, you get so much more comfortable to play leads on it because it's like it's heavy and it's so balanced. So if I could put a couple more pounds on this, or maybe not a couple more pounds, maybe a pound or so, I don't know. Something a little heavier would be a little nice, but at the same time, it's nice on my back. I don't have to, it's light. I can throw it around really easily. So I'm just used to it. I've toured around the world on it, and I have that, when I have it on stage, I feel comfortable. And I think that's a really big part of playing in the studio or on stage, is just being comfortable. If you're playing a guitar you're not used to, and you're uncomfortable, you're not going to play good. You're not going to play well. And this just feels right. It's it's been through a lot. It's got some battle scars on it, and it also has a sound to it. I don't know. It's I put the same pickups in that guitar, and it's similar, but this has some type of body thing that I can't describe.
I think that in closing, I don't want to punish about it, but I feel like everyone who sat here and watched this whole thing would get mad at me if I didn't at least ask the obvious question. Yeah. Power Trip's playing shows again. It's been a few years since we lost Riley. I'm sure that there have been no shortage of offers to do reunions and special sets in one form or another, but you chose now to do it and to come out to California to kick it off. Why now? Under what circumstances? What did those discussions feel like? Just talk to me about the headspace we're in now and why it feels right.
It was all just sort of timing. I mean, me and Seth had been playing together in Fugitive for a couple of years, and I think it was last summer I was talking that we had just played a pretty big show with Fugitive, and we had just put out some new songs, and I just had seen his growth, and I think he had realized it too as a frontman and a singer, and he was comfortable playing with me. Obviously, we'd written music together and performed together a lot. And I think Nick filled in at a show. So it was like 3 of us on stage out of the 5 now. And it's like, this is fun, you know? Like, I miss playing with Nick, of course. I love playing with Victor and, you know, the guys in my other bands. But, you know, I have a different thing with those guys. I've been playing with them since I was a kid. So, you know, once we did that, and I kind of threw the idea at him, and I don't know why I did at that point. I think you know, a friend of ours that was helping us out was like, why don't you ask him if he wants to ever sing the songs or do whatever. I was like, okay, maybe I'll ask him. And I briefly, we were just, I think during COVID or something, we were just hanging out. It's like, would you ever want to do that? And I think he was sort of like, I don't know. I mean, it was a little soon, you know, and I don't know if he had that confidence level yet, but, you know, we just started the band and then we kind of went into Fugitive. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, and he was a good friend of mine, and I thought he was a great singer, but I didn't know how the chemistry was going to work musically or if it was going to turn out great, and it had been going well. And I think the last thing we recorded, the last couple songs we recorded, we were just sort of in the studio laughing, like, this is awesome. Like, he is kicking ass, you know? And yeah, once we did that and we'd been playing these shows, I was like, he can sing these songs. I mean, you know, and who'd be better to do it, you know? There's really I wouldn't even call it a list of people that could really do what he's doing that would make sense, you know? Just because it's more about, I mean, obviously he's a great singer and his voice is you know, in a similar range of where Riley was, but he's his own singer, he's his own guy. But yeah, again, you know, the list of people, we're not interested in doing YouTube tryouts or, you know, finding some random guy. We're keeping it in the family. Yeah, we would only do it if it was someone from our world and our scene and that had history with us. And, you know, when you narrow it down that much, there's really just nobody. And it's not, but it worked out beautifully in the sense that we didn't have to settle for anybody. It was just a guy that that was a great friend of mine and ours, and that I'd already been playing with, and it just made total sense, you know? So there's no one else that I would rather have or that would be a better person to be doing it. And, you know, we're just having a lot of fun. And it's, you know, it just ended so abruptly, I think. And, you know, we're just mainly wanting to get out there and play to all the fans and the people that never got to see us. You know, there's a lot of younger people, there's older people that discovered us during COVID, you know, and, you know, a lot of people that are going to shows right now. It's a really good time, and I think the timing makes sense. And obviously just getting really cool offers from fests like No Values, sort of, you know, lit a fire under our ass to try to see if we can make it happen. But I felt like we could, especially when I talked to him. You know, if I got any hesitancy right out of the gate, I would have said, yeah, let's not worry about it. But if he was confident and he wanted to take it on, I was like, let's give it a shot. So yeah, I think right now we're just enjoying the moment that we battled through a lot to get back here, and I mean a lot, you know, in a lot of different ways. So it's really special that we get to do this again, and we just want to honor what we've done, and obviously the legacy of the band, legacy of Riley, and you know, try to write the story a little differently, because it ended very abruptly, and I think there wasn't a lot of closure for a lot of people. So you know, it's fun to be able to play with these guys again, play the songs again. I'm very proud of the songs and what we've done, and you know, if there's people that are willing to come see us and see the band, and then we're down, you know. But I'm thankful to be playing music and writing and still doing Fugitive, writing the Fugitive album, trying to get that finished so we can do that too, and just you know, we want to do some Power Trip shows here and there, and once we do that for a little while, we can see where we're at and what we want to do in the future. But I think right now it's mainly just enjoying this moment.
Hell yeah.
And returning to the old songs, and you know, just having fun, not worrying about anything else, just having fun.
This weekend is super special for you guys. You know how much it means to me. You know, how long have I been coming, seeing you play gigs, to be here with you, doing it with you. It's a really, it feels real cool, and you guys killed it last night. Not saying there's going to be more chances for everyone watching, but if there is a chance to see Power Trip, don't fuck up. Go see Power Trip. They're killing it, firing on all cylinders. Can't wait for a Fugitive record. And yeah, man, just keep on defending that riff, dude.
Trying our best.
Hell yeah. Thanks for hanging, Blake. Yeah. This has been a lot of fun, dude.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. And it's an honor to be here. And I'm just as lucky to have guys like you and Carlos and everybody hanging out with us and helping us out, because those are all our buddies. And you know, more than anything, it's just fun to get to hang out with our friends and also get to play and do all this stuff. So we're very lucky, and yeah, couldn't be happier with the way it's going so far.
It's very mutual. Let's go out there and kick some ass.
Oh yeah.
We like to close things out with some more riff in here, with us playing together. I think the only way to do it is probably with the fan favorite Executioner's Tax, which on surface level is got to be one of the simplest one note riding, chugging an E for a verse riff. And for whatever reason, the way you do it, it comes off so powerful and is literally a fan favorite. Talk to me about a one note riff and writing a one note riff to be that badass.
Well, you know, like the lead up to the chorus is mainly intended just to be like just a groove, you know, mainly for the vocals to take the center stage. So that was really just about the groove for that and laying it out for the vocalist, you know, to lay down on. But you know, we were just jamming, me and Chris in the room, and that's kind of what happened. His drumming sort of dictated where we went with it. You know, I had a few, you know, a couple riffs sort of ready, I guess, but a lot of it happened organically because we were just jamming. So, you know, you're just grooving, and then he kind of comes in with that fill that leads into the chorus. And then I think we had talked about sort of the dynamic of switching from a double time hi-hat to like a more of a straight hi-hat, like a you know, going from the verse to the chorus, and that kind of push and pull thing, that pressure release thing, which I try to do a lot when I'm writing. So, you know, from him going from the double time energetic drums to the, you know, that's sort of what drives that riff. And it's pretty simple. I mean, you know, we're just jamming, you know, sort of Exodus-y type stuff. And then the chorus riff was really just a play on like a band that we all love, Sacrilege, you know. They're kind of sleazy and rocking in the same way that I guess like Pentagram and stuff that also inspired that song. And I think the tag on the riff sort of just came from Chris. It kind of reminded me of something from one of his bands, like Mammoth Grinder, or even something like old hard, you know, 2000s Boston hardcore, like Locking Out stuff, you know, Righteous Jams or something. So for those who don't know, they were a really cool Boston hardcore band. But it sort of combined all those things in a way that it was a little hardcore, a little metal at the same time. And yeah, it's very simple, but I think that works sometimes, you know, and for whatever reason, it speaks to people in a different way. It's just more about the groove and the song. I think that was the big thing, is like, we're just trying to write a song. And it worked out.
Well, let's lay it on him and get out of here.